I need to film this before my cat breaks back in. So my name is Tia. I am a 5th year PhD candidate in English literature. And I've had this idea bouncing around for a while because I feel like to people who aren't in grad school, especially to people who aren't in a PhD program, it seems like this very aesthetic, alluring, beautiful kind of thing. And granted, it does have those moments, but it's not like that most of the time. I wanted to put something out there where if you are applying for grad school, specifically a humanities PhD such as myself, things I wish I had known before I started. Of course, massive disclaimer. Everybody's different, every program is different, so my experience may not match up with yours. My school is a little bit unique, as you'll hear me talk about a little bit. But yes, these are 5 things I wish someone had told me before I went into my PhD program. Another disclaimer, I am extremely lucky and extremely privileged to be in the position that I'm in, where I have the financial luxury to go to school for a very long time and still have things kind of be okay. And so I want to make sure I really recognize that and acknowledge that that had a massive role in my education. But let's jump in. Number 1, grad school, especially at the dissertation stage, is incredibly isolating. There's 2 main reasons for this. So number 1 is more so like geographic isolation, right? My school is really rural. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere, and my school offers no graduate housing, right? So when you're an undergrad, you're all living in the dorms together, you're gonna go get food together, you know, you're kind of living your life around all of your friends, and there's this very large atmosphere of we're all in this together, we're all going through the same classes, we're all doing this, right? That kind of isn't so much the case, right? Of course there's camaraderie, but at the same time, I live 45 minutes from campus. I have another friend who lives an hour from campus in a different direction. It's gonna be really hard for us to, let's say, grab a coffee or go out for drinks after class because we live in actually different states, right? And that's the case for a lot of us at my school. You'll also find at graduate school that there's a lot of you who are at very different stages in your life, right? In undergrad, especially if you're going to a bigger state school, you're all pretty much, 18 to 24, young, kind of doing this together. There are people in my program who are in their 50s. There are people in my program who worked a 9-to-5 for 20 years and then went back to school. There are people in my program with children, right? And so you're not all at the same point in your lives, and that can make it a little more difficult to kind of form those friendships. The other side of it is going to be the academic isolation, which kind of comes to territory, right? By the time you're a PhD student, it's kind of the whole point. You're going to be the only person at your school studying the specific thing that you're studying, right? So that makes it kind of difficult to talk about your scholarship, talk about what you're writing, because there's not going to be anyone else who understands it quite at the level that you do, other than maybe your advisor. And of course you can talk to, people in your cohort, other people in your program about it, but they might be studying something completely different, right? So it can be hard for me to talk about how I'm going to, let's say, go about performing a certain type of literary analysis on a novel to a classmate of mine who only studies poetry. My advisor used to say this to me all the time, but dissertation work is solitary work. When you're in an undergraduate program, you can go to the library with your friends and work on a project or study for hours. But when you're working on a dissertation and all you're doing is just basically reading and writing, that doesn't lend itself well to being done in groups, right? Because there's not really an aspect of collaboration there. So it can be really isolating when you just have to essentially kind of shut yourself up in your office for 8 hours and do work. And I know you might hear that and be like, that's perfect. It's nice at first, but when it's going on and on for years, it can get really, really lonely. The second thing I wish I knew before starting a PhD program is that you can't give 100% all of the time, right? There's this kind of like triangle of academic needs in college. I'll try to put it up here. That's like, you can have a social life, good grades, or a good sleep schedule, but you can only pick two. In grad school, it's not a triangle, it's like a octagon, okay? So you're trying to balance your mental health, hobbies, friendships, romantic relationships, financial obligations, friends, family, all of that. Additionally, though, there's kind of like an academic portion of this too, where it's not just, oh, focus on school and get good grades anymore. No, there's professionalization, which is like conferences, networking, publications, stuff like that. There's coursework, right? For the first 2 years of your PhD, you'll primarily be in coursework, and so there is weekly reading. There are seminar papers, right? Next, there's your own writing, perhaps for your dissertation or for your comprehensive exams, and that's separate from coursework if you are still in it. And then fourth is teaching. At my school, we are full instructors of record in addition to being graduate students, and so we have to spend a certain amount of time per week, which is highly variable, prepping and grading and full-on teaching, right? And so the big mistake that I made was, for the first 2 years of my coursework, I dedicated myself fully to just coursework and teaching. And I really wished I hadn't. There was a point where I was putting probably about 20 hours a week of work into just teaching alone in terms of prepping and grading and stuff like that. And I really wish I hadn't done that, because what ended up happening was, all of a sudden, it was year 3, it was time to take my comprehensive exams, and my advisor looked at my CV and was like, you have no professionalization experience. What happened? And so now in years 4 and 5, I'm kind of hustling while I'm writing my dissertation to pad that area of my resume or CV, and that sucks, right? If I had just spent a little bit less time worrying about being perfect teaching for the first time, maybe I could have put more effort towards that and had a more expansive CV, or perhaps even have been published by now, which I am not. And that's weird for a 5th year, from what I've heard. Point number 3 is, before you start, ideally, you need to know yourself as a scholar. And so that kind of goes twofold, right? Are you the kind of person who gets your best work done in a crowded cafe with your MacBook out? Or are you the kind of person who needs total isolation, 3 monitors, curtains drawn in your office? And I say this because I have wasted many hours where it's just me and my laptop moving to like different locations in my apartment or in my house or out at Starbucks or something like that. And all of that time figuring out what works for me was time that could have been spent writing. So before you start, figure out what your kind of ideal workspace is, test it out for a little bit, and that way you won't be wasting time once the assignments actually start to trickle in. The 4th thing I wish I knew before starting my program, which is something that people told me, but I don't think I entirely believed them, is that the rest of your life doesn't stop just because you're getting a PhD. I can really only speak from experience, but I'm in a position now where I do have to take a 6th year. Yes, I do. And that is because in 2025, I got married, bought a house, moved, and got a puppy, all while trying to work on my dissertation. So obviously in 2025, I did not get that much writing done. And I kind of had to learn that, like, that's okay. But also I should have seen it coming. I thought I could do all of this while still writing like 5 pages a week or something, and that's just not how it works, right? I know in undergrad there's kind of this, when you're an undergrad, especially if you're living on campus, you're kind of in a little bit of a bubble, right? Where you're literally there just to make friends and go to school. That's it. And in graduate school, that bubble is completely shattered. You're living in the real world. Your other friends and everyone else around you is going to have a 9 to 5 while you are making no money. You might be getting married, you might be having children, right? And so there isn't that kind of sheltered feeling to the work anymore. It's like, okay, you're in the real world, but you're still at school. And that can be really tough to balance. The last thing I wish I knew is that you're probably still going to have to take out student loans even if you have a fellowship. I personally don't have to take them out, and thankfully I'm in the position where my husband does financially support me throughout my education, and so the little bit I'm getting paid for my fellowship, it's enough to kind of get us by, right? For a lot of people, it's not enough, right? We all know that graduate students, we might get paid, but we don't get paid a living wage. And so for people who are single or whose partner is also in school, or people who live far away from their support system and their family, right? They still have to take out student loans just to pay rent. A lot of people in my program are also on food stamps, which is something that I did not hear anybody talking about until this year. There's tons of people in my program who, in addition to balancing all of the work-life stuff that I just talked about, there's this massive kind of financial cloud hanging over them. And especially now things are changing with the government. Some people can't take out student loans anymore, they don't qualify, or what have you. And so there's a lot of people in my program who are, I'm not just gonna say, classic poor grad student. It's on a different level where we're actively going into like tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt, despite the fact that on the surface it looks like, oh, well, you're getting paid to go to school. This is something to consider. And this is personally one of the reasons I did not go to school somewhere far away from my partner and my support system, because it wasn't a financially viable option, and I didn't want to be under the stress of taking out more student loans, right? But I am one of the few people in my program who is in that situation. And I won't get into the specifics, but my program has one of the highest paying salaries for a humanities PhD on the East Coast. And so that being said, you need some type of financial game plan. You also need to acknowledge that even if your degree is fully funded, there's a good possibility that you're still going to come out of this a lot poorer than you went into it. And if that's something that you're willing to do, or if that's something that you're able to do. If this helps one person, then it was worth overcoming the immense anxiety of recording my face and putting my voice on the internet. So I hope it helps. If anybody wants anything more like this, I am totally glad to talk more about my experience in graduate school. I've been in here for 7 years now, and so I'm more than happy to talk about it or share tips with anyone. If you made it here through my first video, God bless you. Thank you then for watching, and I hope you all have a great day. You're being really annoying.